I can still recall the scent of freshly baked chocolate cake that morning, an unusual treat in our household. My mother, who rarely ventured into the kitchen except to grab scissors for coupon clipping, had never baked anything like this, not even for holidays like Thanksgiving or Christmas. That day, though, she did. And it should have been my first clue that something was terribly wrong. I had just turned 18, still in my worn gray pajamas, my hair thrown into a messy bun, when my father summoned me to the living room. He sat rigidly in his leather armchair, staring at the floor, while my mother perched beside him, her hands tightly clasped, avoiding my eyes. There was no warmth, no birthday wishes, just a heavy, suffocating silence. "Sit down," my father said, his voice low and detached, like the time I'd accidentally broken the dining room lamp in 6th grade. I obeyed, my fingers nervously tugging at the hem of my shirt. I could sense it. Everything I thought I knew was about to unravel. My mother spoke first, her words stiff and rehearsed. "You were adopted." The world seemed to stop. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My ears rang with a hollow silence. "We brought you home when you were nearly 3, my father added. "Your birth mother couldn't care for you. We did what we could." I stared at a loose thread on the carpet, trying to process their words. There were no hugs, no tears, just a cold, clinical delivery as if they were announcing a change in insurance coverage. Then came the real blow. "It's time for you to go your own way," my mother said, her voice flat, devoid of emotion. My father reached under his chair and slid a small canvas bag toward me. It hit the floor with a dull thud, heavier than it appeared. "Some cash, a few clothes. We've booked you a temporary room at a motel," he said. They were kicking me out. On my 18th birthday. I didn't scream or cry. I stood slowly, my face a mask of calm I'd perfected in a home that valued silence over connection. "Thank you," I said softly, my voice steady as I picked up the bag. They didn't see how my fingers gripped the strap, so tightly my knuckles whitened. They had no idea I already knew the truth, thanks to something I'd uncovered 3 weeks earlier. It started when I was searching for old records for a scholarship application. In the upstairs hallway cabinet, buried beneath stacks of tax returns and banking papers, I found a yellowed, unsealed envelope with the name L. Warner, written in elegant cursive. I didn't recognize the name, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a copy of my birth certificate. My name, Emily Harper, was listed, but under Mother was a name I'd never seen. Abigail Warner. The father's line was blank. I sat on the cold floor, my heart racing. Who was Abigail Warner? For the next 3 weeks, I searched in secret, not breathing a word to anyone in the house. It was just me and the internet, piecing together fragments of a hidden past. I found old articles archived in the city library's digital database. Abigail Warner had been a psychology researcher at a neurotherapy center in the northern suburbs. She'd caused a scandal by accusing the center's director of misconduct during experimental treatments on women. Shortly after, she was detained for unstable behavior and sent to a psychiatric facility called Pinewood Grove. After 2004, her name vanished from public records. No photos, no updates, nothing. The more I read, the colder I felt. I didn't know if she was alive, and her name had never been mentioned in our home. But one question gnawed at me. Why was I, the daughter of a whistleblower, adopted by parents with financial ties to the very center she exposed? My 18th birthday wasn't just the day I was cast out. It was the day I realized my entire life had been a carefully constructed lie. I left the suburban house with its white porch and shuttered windows without a backward glance. It was no longer a home, but a stage for a play I'd never auditioned for. The motel they'd booked reeked of bleach and damp carpet, the hum of the nearby highway keeping me awake. My canvas bag sat by the bed, holding 2 outfits, some loose change, and the yellow envelope I'd kept hidden, the only thing of real value I owned. The next morning, I went to the city library, the only place that felt safe. At the public computers, my hands still shaking, I typed Abigail Warner and dug deeper, moving beyond news articles to digital archives, leaked documents, and investigative journalism forums. A new name kept surfacing, Dr. Edward Langley, the former medical director of the Langley Institute for Behavioral Health. From 2003 to 2004, Abigail had been the lead specialist there until she filed a report on unethical practices, including unapproved drug trials and invasive behavioral interventions on female patients, without guardians. A week after her report, she was suspended. A month later, she was institutionalized at Pinewood Grove for long-term observation. Her records disappeared, and her name faded into obscurity. I printed everything, stuffing the pages into my coat pocket. On my way back, I recalled the letters my adoptive father, Robert Harper, used to receive from something called the Horizon Foundation. I'd assumed it was a charity, but that name appeared in a footnote in one of the articles I'd printed. The Horizon Foundation had funded the Langley Institute from 2000 until its closure in 2005. My blood ran cold. Was Robert just an adoptive father, or was he part of this system? Public donation records showed a 2011 donor report listing Robert Harper as a distinguished benefactor to the Horizon Foundation, with a note about special contributions to post-recovery support programs. My chest tightened. He never spoke about therapy or visited hospitals, yet he donated to a foundation linked to the facility where my birth mother was silenced. The truth was undeniable. Robert and his wife, Susan, the woman who'd once held my hand when I was sick, who helped me choose a prom dress, knew everything and said nothing. That night, I skipped the motel and found an all-night coffee shop, claiming a booth in the darkest corner. In my old notebook, I mapped it all out. Names, dates, addresses, connections. At the center was Abigail Warner, a woman who lost everything for telling the truth, then was erased by a diagnosis. I didn't know if she was alive or if Pinewood Grove still existed under a new name, but I had to find out. I started calling medical records offices, notary centers, and mental health facilities near the Langley area. Most hung up or claimed they had no records. But one woman at the state archives paused when I mentioned Abigail Warner. "You're not the first to ask about her," she said before disconnecting. That sent a chill through me. Who else had asked? Did they find her? Or did they vanish? It took nearly 2 weeks to track down Pinewood Grove. It had closed in 2010, leaving no website or public files, just a gray patch on most maps. An old forum post about psychiatric care anomalies mentioned a facility called Serenity Haven, rumored to have taken in special transfers after Pinewood shut down. Using a payphone and a fake name, I called Serenity Haven. The receptionist said they couldn't share patient info but hesitated when I asked about Abigail Warner. She put me on hold, then transferred me to a calm, cautious woman who asked, "What is your relationship to Ms. Warner?" Without hesitation, I said, "I'm her daughter." After a long silence, she replied, "You can visit, but only during restricted hours, and you'll need to sign a no recording agreement." I agreed immediately. The next morning, I took a 6:15 bus to the northern suburbs. Serenity Haven sat on a misty hillside, isolated and forgotten, its stone building overgrown with ivy. The air was sharp with the scent of damp wood and antiseptic. After signing a form at the front desk, I was directed to room 14 on the second floor. My heart pounded as I reached the white wooden door. I took a deep breath, pushed it open, and saw her, a thin woman with snow-white hair, sitting by a window where sunlight filtered through sheer curtains. The room was silent except for the faint echo of my heartbeat. "Miss Abigail?" I whispered. She turned slowly, her dark brown eyes meeting mine, filled with a mix of sadness and recognition. I sat across from her and said, "My name is Emily. I'm your daughter." Her eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. "I remember," she said softly. "I never forgot." I placed the birth certificate and printed articles on the table. "I found everything. I know they took me." She exhaled, as if a weight had lifted after nearly 2 decades. "They said I was paranoid, that I imagined things," she said. "But I knew too much." She explained how they'd tested drugs on patients without consent and how she'd gathered proof, only to be suspended and confined. When I mentioned Robert Harper, she trembled. "He coordinated funding for the Horizon Foundation, one of the Institute's protectors," she said. When they took you, your file was sealed. I tried to stop it, but they declared me legally incompetent. I realized I was crying. Abigail reached out, hesitant, and I took her hand, thin and cold, but warmer than any embrace I'd known. As I left, she whispered, "Be careful. They still watch." A nurse knocked, signaling my time was up. I turned back and promised, "I'll come back. I'll get you out." She nodded, her lips moving faintly. I leaned in to hear. Never trust anyone in a white coat. I returned to the library, no longer searching for my roots, but preparing for a fight. Among my printouts, one name stood out, Margaret Ellis, a former nurse at Pinewood Grove from 1998 to 2010. An anonymous forum post said she was the last willing to remember. After tracing disconnected numbers and old emails, I found a mailbox address in Michigan and sent a handwritten letter with copies of my birth certificate and the Langley Institute article. A week later, an anonymous email arrived. "I know who your mother is. Meet me Saturday, back entrance of Clarkson Cafe, 10 a.m. Come alone." At the cafe, Margaret was waiting, gray hair, wool coat, sharp eyes. "You're Abigail's daughter," she said immediately. She was the only one brave enough to speak the truth. I didn't waste time. "I need proof to expose them." She handed me a faded flash drive labeled Light_Pilot_1, containing treatment records, med logs, and a video Abigail had kept as evidence. "It's not enough yet," she warned, "but it's undeniable." Back in the city, I knew I needed help. I contacted Laura Bennett, a former investigative journalist fired for pursuing a case tied to shady medical funds. Her blog was a treasure trove of forgotten scandals. Internal documents, and the names of those holding my mother hostage. She called within an hour. "You serious?" she asked, her voice dry. "A story like this cost me my career, but it could reclaim your name." We met in a dusty former newsroom, now her archive. When we played the video, blurry footage of Abigail restrained, answering a doctor's cold questions, Laura's face hardened. "This is real," she said. "But we have to do this right, or people will disappear." Over 3 weeks, we built a case. Laura contacted attorneys who'd investigated medical ethics violations. I sent files to a whistleblower platform. Margaret provided a statement and an old recording of Abigail. On April 12th, we went live. The video leaked online, an article hit an investigative news site, and a podcast aired about unauthorized testing. Robert Harper and Edward Langley were named as Horizon Foundation board members. Social media erupted, and stories poured in from others affected by Pinewood and Serenity Haven. The state attorney general launched an investigation, and federal authorities raided the Horizon Foundation and Serenity Haven. My final goal was to free Abigail. With Laura and Margaret, I returned to Serenity Haven, armed with proof and a subpoena. The staff relented, and within an hour, Abigail walked out, her eyes no longer fearful. I held her hand. "Let's go home, Mom." She smiled, a smile that had waited 19 years. At the first court hearing, I watched Robert Harper, no longer the father who'd nagged me about vegetables. His eyes were afraid. The prosecutor presented the video, medication logs, and reports signed by Harper and Langley. When my name was mentioned as a child illegally adopted to cover up a whistleblower case, the courtroom fell silent. Weeks later, an anonymous email revealed another truth. Sarah Langley, a journalism student who investigated Pinewood and vanished in 2012. She was alive, living under an alias in Nebraska. I met her, and together with Abigail, Laura, and Margaret, we founded the Truth Keepers, a nonprofit supporting victims silenced by false diagnoses. The media called it a revolution in mental health care, but for me, it was justice for my mother and countless others. I carry my birth certificate in my pocket, not to define me, but to remind me where I came from. I was once lied to, treated as property, but I rose to expose a decades-long system of manipulation. I'm no longer Emily Harper, the child they hid, but a voice for those silenced. And that, to me, is true freedom.